Little boy sent a secret signal to the royal guard. He threw down his rifle and rushed forward. The morning sun had barely risen over the small village when the first sounds of chaos shattered the fragile calm. Birds that usually sang in the quiet dawn now scattered in every direction, their wings beating frantically against the sky. Smoke curled from the edges of the village, where a few huts had already been touched by fire. The streets were empty, except for a few villagers hurrying to gather their families and possessions. Among them was a small boy named Ion. Ion was just 12 years old, but the hardships of life had made him older than his years. He had seen too much: fires, shouting, people running with terror in their eyes, but today was different. Today, something larger than fear had settled in the pit of his stomach. He could sense danger before it arrived. His heart beat rapidly as he peeked through the door of his home. The village square, usually filled with the laughter of children and the chatter of merchants, was now a scene of confusion. Villagers ran in every direction, carrying what little they could save, and their faces were pale with worry. Ion's hands shook slightly as he picked up the rifle leaning against the wall. It was heavy for someone his age, but necessity had made him familiar with it. His father had taught him how to handle it just in case, but Ion had never imagined he would actually need it. The sound of shouting from the far end of the village grew louder, and Ion realized that the rebel forces had arrived. Their rough voices and hurried footsteps sent shivers down his spine. He could see their shapes through the smoke, a mix of men and older boys, armed and moving quickly toward the center of the village. Their eyes were hard, their faces set in determination. They had a goal, and it was clear that nothing would stop them. Ion knew that the royal guards who were stationed nearby to protect the villagers were his only hope. But the guards were few, and the rebels were clever. Ion's mind raced as he thought about what he could do. Could a boy his age really make a difference? The rebel soldiers began moving from house to house, breaking down doors and shouting threats. Ion crouched behind a wall, peering out carefully. His heart pounded so loudly he feared it might give him away. The smoke stung his eyes and his hands were slick with sweat. He gripped the rifle tighter, but he didn't want to use it, not yet. He wanted to survive, to help, to warn the guards if he could. The boy knew there had to be a way to alert them before it was too late. Ion's eyes scanned the area beyond the village square. There, in the distance, he could see the royal guards approaching, riding swiftly on horses and carrying their banners. They were trained soldiers, disciplined and strong, but they didn't know about the ambush waiting for them. Rebels had hidden along the edges of the forest and in the narrow paths between the huts. If the guards entered the village without knowing the danger, many could be hurt, or worse. The boy's mind raced with possibilities. He thought about running to the guards and shouting, but he knew the rebels would see him. They were watching carefully, and any sudden movement could endanger everyone. Then an idea struck him. He remembered something his father had once told him. Even the smallest action can change the course of events if done at the right time. Could he be that small action? Could he save lives with just a signal? Ion's heart swelled with a mix of fear and courage. He decided he had to act. He needed to find a way to send a warning to the royal guards to let them know about the trap. His mind worked quickly as he looked around for anything that could help. Pieces of cloth, stones, even a small reflection of sunlight, anything could serve as a signal. He found an old red scarf lying near the doorway. It was torn and dirty, but it would do. He held it in his hand and planned his movements carefully, trying to stay low and hidden. The rebels were moving closer, and the tension in the village grew. Ion could hear the cries of frightened villagers, the crash of doors, and the angry shouts of the attackers. He felt his stomach tighten and a lump formed in his throat, but even with all the fear, he knew he could not freeze. This was his moment to act. He whispered a silent promise to himself. "I will help them. I will not fail." He picked his moment carefully. As a group of rebels moved between two huts, he darted from his hiding spot, keeping low to the ground. The scarf in his hand was ready. Ion waved it in a specific pattern, just as he had imagined. The movement was small enough that the rebels might not notice, but it was distinct enough that the royal guards could see from a distance. His heart pounded with every second, each movement feeling like an eternity. Suddenly, a soldier from the rebel group turned in his direction. Ion froze for a moment, barely breathing. The soldier's eyes scanned the area, and for a terrifying second, it felt as if he might be discovered. But then, distracted by a shout from one of his comrades, the The soldier turned away. Relief flooded Ion like a wave. He continued his signal, holding the scarf high enough for the guards to notice, but low enough to avoid attention from the rebels. Moments later, Ion heard the horses of the royal guards drawing closer. He could see the banners flapping in the wind, a symbol of hope amidst the chaos. He felt a surge of determination. He had to get closer. He had to make sure the signal reached them clearly. Dropping the rifle, which now felt heavy and unnecessary, Ion ran forward. Each step was filled with fear, but also with an unshakable resolve. He ran past overturned carts, broken fences, and debris from the damaged village. Every heartbeat reminded him of the danger, but also of the importance of his mission. The villagers, watching from behind their doors and windows, could hardly believe their eyes. A small boy, not even in his teens, was running across open ground, waving a piece of cloth, trying to reach the royal guards. Some of them gasped, thinking it was too dangerous, but others felt a spark of hope. If the boy could succeed, perhaps there was a chance for survival. As Ion ran, he could hear the rebels noticing him now. Shouts rang out, and a few shots were fired in his direction. Panic threatened to take over, but he forced himself to keep moving. He ducked behind walls and barrels whenever he could, moving in quick bursts between cover. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but he refused to stop. The thought of the guards walking into a trap, unaware of the danger, fueled his every step. Finally, the royal guards noticed the signal. One of them raised his hand, signaling the others to halt. They understood immediately. The hidden rebels had been spotted, and the guard captain quickly changed their strategy. Instead of advancing blindly, they began to move cautiously, positioning themselves to avoid the ambush. Ion's heart leapt with relief. His small action had made a difference. Even as the guards adjusted their positions, Ion continued running toward them. When he reached their side, he could see the surprise in their eyes, at first disbelief, then admiration. They recognized the courage it had taken for a boy to act in the face of such danger. Ion, breathless and exhausted, waved the scarf one final time and pointed toward the hidden rebels. The guards immediately understood and nodded, ready to respond. For a moment, the chaos seemed to pause. The villagers, hiding behind walls and doors, watched the scene unfold. A small boy had risked everything, and in doing so, he had given the royal guards the advantage they needed. The sense of fear that had gripped the village moments ago was slowly being replaced with hope. Ion stood there, chest heaving, trying to catch his breath. He looked around at the soldiers who were now preparing to defend the village. Some of them smiled at him, a gesture of respect and gratitude. He felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet pride that came from knowing he had acted with courage when it mattered most. Even as the danger was still present, Ion understood that this moment was significant. He had faced fear head-on and had taken action that could save lives. The lessons of the day would stay with him forever: the importance of courage, the impact of small actions, and the strength that comes from believing in oneself. And so, amidst the smoke and chaos, a small boy had made a big difference. He had taken the first step toward changing the course of events, not with strength or weapons, but with determination, intelligence, and courage. The village might still face challenges ahead, but in that moment, Ion knew something important. Even the smallest among them could rise and become a hero. The moment Ion reached the royal guards, he felt a mixture of relief and nervous excitement. The soldiers were strong and disciplined, and their presence alone brought a sense of safety to the village. Yet the boy knew that the danger was far from over. The rebels were still hidden, waiting for a chance to strike, and time was running out. Every second counted. Captain Zahir, the leader of the guards, immediately noticed the boy waving the red scarf. His eyes, sharp and alert, followed Ion's pointing fingers. He quickly understood the situation. "There's an ambush ahead," he muttered to his men. "Stay alert. Move carefully." The soldiers adjusted their positions, spreading out to cover all the possible paths the rebels could use. Ion felt a small surge of pride. His signal had worked. He had done exactly what he had set out to do, but there was no time to celebrate. The rebels were clever, and they had been observing the village for days. They had planned every step, every movement, and they were not going to let a small boy ruin their plans without trying to stop him. Ion knew this. As the guards moved cautiously toward the forest edge where the rebels were hiding, he realized he could not simply stand back. He had to stay close, to help guide them, and to ensure the villagers remained safe. The boy ran alongside the guards, ducking behind walls and barrels whenever they passed open ground. He shouted warnings when he saw suspicious movement, an overturned crate, a flash of a weapon, a shadow moving quickly through the underbrush. Each time he alerted the soldiers, they adjusted their positions, avoiding potential danger. Ion's heart raced. He had never felt such responsibility before, but he refused to falter. He knew that every small action could save lives. As they advanced, Ion remembered the narrow alleyways between the huts. These paths could provide cover for the rebels to attack the guards from behind. He quickly pointed this out to Captain Zahir. "They might hide here," he said, his voice trembling but firm. The captain nodded, sending 2 guards to secure the alleyways. Ion felt a rush of satisfaction. Even though he was just a boy, his knowledge of the village and careful observation could protect experienced soldiers. The group moved cautiously, the tension thick in the air. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping branch made Ion flinch. He had seen what the rebels could do, and he knew that any misstep could cost lives. Yet despite the fear, he kept his focus. His mind worked quickly, analyzing every detail of the surroundings. He remembered the advice his father had given him long ago. Look closely, think carefully, and act bravely. Today, those words were his guiding light. Suddenly, a sound from the far side of the forest caught their attention. A twig snapped, followed by the faint rustle of movement. The guards immediately took positions, their weapons raised, eyes scanning for any sign of the enemy. Ion's pulse quickened. He could see the outline of a rebel hiding behind a tree, ready to strike. Without hesitation, he pointed directly at the figure. The guards moved silently, surrounding the rebel before he could act. The boy's warning had once again prevented disaster. As the morning sun climbed higher, the village seemed to hold its breath. Villagers peered cautiously from behind doors and windows, watching the brave soldiers and the small boy who had guided them. Mothers clutched their children tightly, whispering prayers for their safety. Ion felt a mixture of fear and determination. He could not let anyone down. He would continue, no matter how dangerous it became. The rebels, realizing that their ambush had been discovered, began to retreat further into the forest. They tried to hide among the trees and thick bushes, hoping the guards would lose track of them. But Ion's sharp eyes did not let them escape. He spotted footprints, broken branches, and disturbed leaves that marked the rebels' path. Carefully, he signaled the guards to follow, leading them through the safest routes while avoiding traps. At one point, they reached a small clearing where the rebels had set up a temporary camp. Smoke rose from a small fire, and discarded weapons lay scattered around. Ion pointed toward the camp, and Captain Zahir nodded. "Good work, boy," he said. "Your eyes are sharper than some of our scouts." Ion felt a rush of pride, but quickly shook it off. There was still work to do. They had to ensure the rebels could not regroup and threaten the village again. The guards moved in a coordinated manner, surrounding the camp without making a sound. Ion stayed behind a tree, watching carefully. He noticed a few younger rebels, perhaps barely older than himself, hiding near the fire. Their eyes widened in fear as they realized the guards had them surrounded. Ion felt a pang of sadness. These were children, too, caught in a war they did not choose. But he pushed the thought aside. The immediate danger to the villagers was his priority. The rebels surrendered without a fight, realizing resistance would be useless. The guards tied them up and secured the weapons. Ion watched closely, ensuring none of them escaped. He felt a sense of accomplishment. The village was safer now, at least for the moment, and his actions had played a key role in protecting it. Even as the immediate threat ended, the tension did not disappear. Ion knew that the rebels could return and that other dangers might lie ahead. He felt a mixture of exhaustion and alertness. His legs ached from running, and his lungs burned from the effort, but his mind remained sharp. He could not afford to relax completely. The safety of the villagers depended on continued vigilance. The villagers slowly emerged from their hiding places, eyes wide with relief and admiration. They approached Ion cautiously, unsure at first, but then breaking into smiles of gratitude. Mothers lifted their children to see the boy who had bravely run into danger. Elderly men shook his hand, their eyes shining with pride. Ion felt warmth spread through him. He had acted not for praise, but for the safety of others, yet the recognition gave him courage for the challenges still ahead. Captain Zahir approached him once more, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "You have a brave heart, Ion," he said. "Today you helped us save many lives. Never forget the power of courage, even when you are small." Ion nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The captain's words felt heavy with meaning. He realized that courage was not about size or strength, but about determination, quick thinking, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. As the afternoon passed, the village slowly began to return to a fragile sense of normalcy. The fires were put out, broken huts were repaired as best as possible, and villagers shared food and water with one another. Ion helped where he could, carrying small supplies, checking for injured animals, and ensuring that everyone was accounted for. Despite his young age, he felt a responsibility toward the community. He had taken action once, and he was determined to continue helping in any way he could. Evenings in the village were always quiet, but that day, the night carried a different feeling. Ion sat outside his home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The sounds of the village children laughing again, the distant barking of dogs, the soft murmur of conversation, filled him with a sense of hope. The events of the day would remain in his memory forever. He had faced fear, taken risks, and discovered a strength within himself that he had never known before. Yet, Ion also understood that bravery carried responsibility. The rebels might return, and other dangers might arise. He knew that vigilance and courage would always be necessary, not just for himself, but for everyone around him. He felt a deep connection to the village and its people, a bond forged through shared hardship and collective survival. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Ion reflected on the lessons he had learned. He realized that even a small boy could make a big difference. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Wisdom could be found in observation, careful planning, and understanding the strengths and weaknesses of both friends and foes. And most importantly, he understood that hope was a powerful force, capable of guiding people through even the darkest times. Ion's parents came to him quietly, placing their hands on his shoulders. They did not scold him for risking his life. Instead, they embraced him, their eyes filled with pride and concern. "You were brave," his father said softly. "Brave and wise, we are proud of you, Ion." The boy nodded, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and exhaustion. He knew that tomorrow could bring new challenges, but for now, he allowed himself a moment of rest. In the quiet of the evening, the village rested. Guards patrolled the edges, keeping watch for any returning threats, while villagers tended to their homes and families. Ion lay on the soft grass outside his house, staring up at the stars, thinking about the day's events. He had discovered something profound about himself. Courage could come from the smallest heart, and a single action could change the course of many lives. The village would remember this day, and so would Ion. It was a day when fear was met with bravery, when chaos was met with quick thinking, and when a small boy's courage had saved the lives of many. And though the road ahead would not be easy, Ion felt ready to face it, armed with determination, hope, and the knowledge that even in the darkest times, one brave heart could make all the difference. The next morning, the village woke to an uneasy calm. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the damaged huts and charred ground. Although the rebels had retreated for now, Ion knew the danger was not completely gone. The events of the previous day had left the villagers shaken but grateful, and the royal guards were still stationed at the edges of the village to ensure safety. Ion woke early, as he always did, even when he had spent the night exhausted. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing on him. Yesterday, he had acted bravely and helped save lives, but he knew that vigilance was never over. The village still had weak points, areas where rebels could try to sneak back, and people who might need his help. Ion did not consider himself a hero. He was simply determined to do what needed to be done. As he stepped outside, he saw Captain Zahir talking to the villagers. His face was calm but serious, giving instructions about keeping watch, securing supplies, and repairing damage. Ion approached quietly, listening. He understood that leadership was about more than just fighting. It was about planning, guiding, and thinking ahead. The captain noticed him and gave a small nod. "Ion, we will need your eyes today," he said softly. "You saw the rebels' movements yesterday. Your guidance could help us prevent further danger." Ion felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. He knew that the next hours would be just as dangerous, if not more so. He followed the guards as they moved through the village, checking alleyways, rooftops, and hidden paths. Every corner of the village was important. Even the smallest detail could mean the difference between safety and disaster. The boy's eyes, sharp and alert, scanned everything. A fallen branch, a broken fence, or even a distant shadow could indicate danger. As they reached the edge of the village, Ion noticed a group of rebels moving quietly through the forest. They had returned, perhaps thinking the village was weakened after yesterday's chaos. Ion froze for a moment, his heart pounding. He realized that this time the rebels were more cautious, more strategic. They were testing the village defenses, and he had to act quickly to alert the guards without revealing his position. The boy's mind raced. He remembered the signal he had used yesterday, the scarf, the waving, but now he needed something different. He looked around and found a small piece of shiny metal, likely left from a broken pot. Holding it carefully, he angled it to catch the sunlight, creating a bright flash that could be seen from a distance. He waved it in a pattern he had practiced, hoping the guards would understand. Captain Zahir noticed the flash almost immediately. "There!" he shouted. "Move carefully." "The rebels are approaching." The soldiers adjusted their positions and began moving through the village more cautiously, using the buildings and natural cover to protect themselves. Ion followed closely, guiding them silently and pointing out every movement he noticed. The rebels, realizing their presence had been detected, began to split into smaller groups, trying to confuse the guards. Ion's sharp eyes caught every detail. One group was attempting to sneak through a narrow path between two houses, while another was hiding near a stack of firewood, waiting for the right moment to attack. He alerted the soldiers quietly, pointing toward the hidden threats. The guards moved swiftly, surrounding the rebels before they could act. Even as the immediate danger was managed, Ion knew this was just the beginning. The village was still vulnerable in many areas. He moved through the streets, checking corners, rooftops, and hidden paths, making sure the villagers were safe. Mothers and children watched him with a mix of awe and gratitude, recognizing that this small boy had become a guardian of their community. The sun climbed higher and the heat began to make the day uncomfortable. Ion felt the sweat running down his face, but he ignored it. Every moment counted. He noticed a small group of rebels attempting to climb a low wall to enter a storage area where the villagers kept food and water. Without hesitation, he shouted a warning, and the guards rushed to intercept them. The rebels were caught off guard and quickly retreated, unable to complete their plan. Captain Zahir watched Ion closely. "You have remarkable awareness, boy," he said. "Your eyes and instincts are invaluable." "Keep focused." Ion nodded, determined not to let the captain or the villagers down. He understood that even a small mistake could have serious consequences. The boy moved with precision, alert and ready, guiding the soldiers through the village with courage and intelligence. As the day continued, the rebels tried different tactics. Some attempted to hide behind trees, others disguised themselves among villagers trying to flee. Ion noticed every small movement, every unusual sound. He guided the guards silently, pointing and signaling when necessary. The soldiers followed his lead, impressed by his knowledge of the village and his quick thinking. Despite the danger, Ion's mind remained calm. He had learned to control his fear, to use it as focus rather than letting it paralyze him. He remembered the lessons from his father. Fear is natural, but courage is choice. Choose to act even when you are afraid. Every warning he gave, every signal he sent, was an act of courage. And each time the guards were able to prevent potential harm, keeping the villagers safe. By late afternoon, the rebels began to retreat once more, realizing that the village was well defended and that their plans had been foiled. The villagers emerged from hiding cautiously, their faces filled with relief. They began repairing minor damages, bringing water to the wounded animals, and sharing what little food they had managed to save. Ion moved among them, helping wherever he could, but always keeping his eyes open for any signs of danger. Even as the village began to feel safer, the boy knew that vigilance was never over. He moved through the streets, checking rooftops and alleyways, ensuring that no hidden threats remained. The soldiers appreciated his dedication, and the villagers began to see him not just as a child, but as a protector of their community. As evening approached, the village gathered in the square to discuss what had happened and to plan for the future. Captain Zahir addressed the villagers, praising their courage and cooperation, but also emphasizing the need for continued vigilance. "We faced danger today, but we survived because of quick thinking and bravery," he said. "Remember, even small actions can make a big difference." He looked at Ion and smiled. "Some of the bravest actions come from unexpected places." Ion felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, but he remained humble. He had acted out of necessity, not for recognition. Yet, seeing the gratitude and relief on the faces of the villagers, he understood the impact of his courage. The boy had learned that bravery was not about fighting, but about protecting, guiding, and making the right choices in moments of danger. As night fell, the village settled into an uneasy calm once again. Fires burned safely in small hearths, and villagers spoke in soft voices, sharing stories and laughter to ease the tension of the day. Ion sat outside his home, gazing at the stars, thinking about the events that had unfolded. He realized that courage was a habit, something that had to be practiced and strengthened over time. He had taken one brave step, but he knew that tomorrow might require another. Ion's parents approached him quietly, placing their hands on his shoulders. "You were brave today, more than we could ever imagine," his mother said softly. "You have protected this village and its people." Ion nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. He understood that bravery was not about seeking praise, but about acting when it mattered most. The boy reflected on the day's events and the lessons he had learned. He had discovered that even someone small could influence the outcome of great challenges. Observing carefully, thinking quickly, and acting courageously could change the course of events. He had realized the importance of community, teamwork, and the value of protecting those who could not defend themselves. Even as he lay down to rest that night, Ion's mind remained alert. He knew that the safety of the village required constant attention. He thought about the rebels, their possible return, and the need to be ready at all times. But he also felt hope. The villagers were resilient, the guards were strong, and together they could face the challenges ahead. And in the midst of it all, a small boy had discovered his own courage and his ability to make a difference. The night passed quietly, with only the soft sounds of the wind and distant animals breaking the silence. Ion slept lightly, always alert to the possibility of danger, but also comforted by the knowledge that he had acted bravely and wisely. He knew that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. He had faced fear head-on, guided others, and protected his village. And that was a lesson he would carry with him forever. By morning, the village had recovered slightly from the chaos of the previous days. Repairs continued, and a cautious optimism filled the air. Villagers moved about their routines, children played quietly in the streets, and the royal guards maintained a watchful presence. Ion prepared himself for another day, knowing that challenges could come at any moment, but feeling ready to face them. He had grown, learned, and discovered that even a small boy could become a protector, a guide, and a symbol of hope. The next morning, the village was calm but alert. The events of the past days had left everyone cautious. Mothers held their children close, elders inspected fences and barricades, and the royal guards patrolled the outskirts diligently. The threat of the rebels had not completely vanished, but the villagers had learned a powerful lesson. Courage and teamwork could protect them even in the face of danger. Ion woke early, as he always did, feeling the familiar mixture of excitement and responsibility. He knew that his role in the village had changed. He was no longer just a boy. He was someone the villagers could rely on, someone who had proven that even the smallest person could make a big difference. As he stepped outside, the crisp morning air filled his lungs, and he could see the villagers preparing for the day. Some were repairing damaged huts, others were bringing water and food to those in need, and a few children watched him with admiration. Captain Zahir approached Ion quietly. "Today we need to strengthen the village defenses," he said, his voice calm but serious. "We will mark weak points, set up safe paths, and make sure everyone knows where to go if the rebels return. Your knowledge of the village is essential." Ion nodded, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. He understood that courage was not only about running into danger. It was also about careful planning, observation, and helping others prepare for what might come. The morning passed quickly as Ion moved through the village alongside the guards. He pointed out narrow paths where the rebels could sneak in, suggested locations for watch points, and identified areas that needed repair. His eyes were sharp, noticing every detail, The slight movement of leaves, the footprints on soft ground, the faint sound of footsteps in the distance. The guards listened carefully, impressed by his insight and dedication. By midday, they had fortified key areas of the village. Barricades were strengthened, escape routes were marked, and villagers were assigned to safe spots. Ion moved among them, offering guidance and reassurance. "Stay calm," he told the younger children. "The soldiers and I will make sure you are safe." His words carried a confidence that inspired those around him. Even though he was small, his actions and voice gave people hope. Suddenly, a shout came from the edge of the forest. Ion's heart raced. The rebels had returned once more. This time, they moved cautiously, trying to test the village defenses without being detected. Ion quickly signaled to Captain Zahir, who nodded and gave commands to the guards. Everyone moved into position, ready to face the threat. The tension in the air was thick, but Ion stayed calm. He knew that fear could cloud judgment, and he focused on observing the enemy. Ion noticed that the rebels were split into small groups, attempting to create confusion. One group tried to approach from the main road, while another hid near the edge of the village, waiting for the right moment to strike. Ion quickly pointed out their positions to the guards. "Over there near the trees," he said, "and the others by the fence." The soldiers acted immediately, moving strategically to surround the intruders before they could reach the villagers. The rebels realized their plans had been discovered. Some tried to flee, while others hid among the trees. Ion, moving with the guards, helped track them carefully. He observed every movement, every shadow, and every sound. His knowledge of the village layout allowed the soldiers to anticipate the rebels' next moves. Slowly, the intruders were cornered and disarmed. The villagers, watching from safe positions, began to feel relief and admiration. A small boy had once again played a critical role in protecting them. After the rebels were secured, Captain Zahir gathered the villagers and soldiers in the main square. "Today, we have proven that courage, planning, and vigilance can overcome danger," he said. His eyes rested on Ion. "And some of the bravest actions come from the most unexpected places." The villagers turned to look at the boy, their faces filled with gratitude and awe. Mothers lifted their children to see him, elders nodded with respect, and even the soldiers offered small smiles of approval. Ion felt a mix of pride and humility. He did not seek recognition, but seeing the impact of his actions filled him with warmth. He had learned that courage was not about being fearless. It was about acting wisely and bravely, even when afraid. His determination, quick thinking, and willingness to help had saved lives, and that knowledge gave him strength. In the days that followed, the village slowly returned to normal. Repairs continued, supplies were restocked, and routines resumed. The royal guards remained nearby, patrolling and training the villagers in basic safety measures. Ion continued to assist, guiding soldiers, helping villagers, and keeping watch. Though he was young, his experience and bravery had made him a natural leader among those who had once doubted what one small person could achieve. The villagers began to share stories of Ion's bravery. Children retold the tale of the boy who ran across the village waving a red scarf to warn the soldiers. Mothers spoke of his sharp eyes and quick thinking. Even the soldiers recounted how the boy had guided them through danger, saving lives and preventing harm. Ion listened quietly, his heart filled with a sense of accomplishment, yet he remained humble. He knew that bravery was not about recognition. It was about responsibility, action, and care for others. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Ion sat outside his home. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the village hummed with quiet activity. He thought about everything that had happened, the fear, the chaos, the moments of courage, and the teamwork that had saved lives. He realized that every small action, every decision, and every act of bravery mattered. A single person could change the course of events, and he had witnessed that truth firsthand. Ion's parents joined him, sitting quietly on the steps of their home. "We are proud of you, Ion," his father said softly. "You have shown courage beyond your years. Not just in battle, but in caring for the people around you." His mother nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "Your heart is brave and kind. Remember that true strength comes from protecting others, not from fighting." Ion smiled, feeling warmth and gratitude. He understood that his actions were not just about survival. They were about love, responsibility, and the power of one person to make a difference. That night, the village rested peacefully. Fires burned safely, children slept soundly, and the soldiers kept watch. Ion lay on the soft grass outside his home, staring at the stars. He thought about the rebels, the dangers they had faced, and the lessons he had learned. He realized that courage was not a single moment. It was a series of choices, small and large, made with wisdom and bravery. He felt ready for whatever challenges might come next, knowing that he had discovered a strength within himself that would guide him always. In the days that followed, the village flourished. Gardens were replanted, homes repaired, and the community grew stronger. The royal guards remained as protectors, but the villagers had also learned to look out for each other, inspired by Ion's example. Children played safely in the streets, laughter returned to the square, and hope filled the air. Ion continued to help wherever he could, guiding, watching, and supporting the community. He understood that bravery was not just about dramatic actions in dangerous moments. It was about daily choices, caring for others, and standing up when needed. His experiences had shaped him, teaching him wisdom, patience, and compassion. One afternoon, Captain Zahir called a small meeting with Ion. "You have done more than any of us expected," he said. "Your courage and intelligence have saved lives. The village owes you gratitude and respect. Never forget the power of one brave heart." Ion felt a deep sense of pride but stayed humble. He knew that it was not just his courage but the teamwork, the preparation, and the support of the villagers and soldiers that had made their survival possible. As the weeks passed, the village regained its strength and sense of community. Ion's story spread beyond the village, inspiring nearby towns and settlements. People spoke of the boy who had acted with bravery and wisdom, guiding soldiers and protecting villagers in the face of danger. He became a symbol of courage, hope, and the truth that even the smallest person can make a great difference. Even as life returned to a more peaceful rhythm, Ion remained vigilant. He continued to help the guards, guide the villagers, and watch over the streets and paths. He understood that courage was not a one-time act but a lifelong habit. The lessons he had learned, the importance of observation, quick thinking, careful planning, and bravery would stay with him forever. One evening, as the village celebrated a small festival to honor their survival, Ion sat quietly on a hill overlooking the square. Children ran and laughed, mothers shared food, and the soldiers patrolled calmly. The boy reflected on the journey he had taken, from fear to courage, from uncertainty to leadership. He realized that bravery was not about being fearless, but about facing fear with wisdom and action. As stars appeared in the night sky, Ion smiled. He had discovered that one person could indeed make a difference. Through courage, quick thinking, and care for others, he had helped protect a community, inspired those around him, and learned the true meaning of heroism. The village was safe, hope had returned, and Ion had grown into a young person capable of facing challenges with bravery and heart. And so, the story of the little boy who sent a secret signal to the royal guard, who threw down his rifle and rushed forward, came to a close. His courage and determination had saved lives, strengthened a community, and shown the world that even the smallest heart could shine brightly in the darkest moments.